All major brands of motorcycle tyres make pretty good tyres these days. It's very hard to go and find a bad one. One in particular that kind of caught my attention that I wanted to find out more about is this one. It's the latest edition from Pirelli. It's the Supercorsa SP V4. Now, in order to find out about this particular tyre, we thought, well, why don't we run an experiment? So we ran the experiment over 6 months, 2 completely different motorcycles, spirited range riding with my buddies on the range, and road racing on track. This video is about that experiment and my conclusions about this particular tyre. The way I ran the experiment is quite simple to explain. First of all, I ran it over 6 months. I wanted to do that because I wanted to experience this tyre from winter through to summer, which is where we are now. I fitted these tyres to 2 different motorcycles. We fitted them to trusty old Bob here, the S1000 BMW, and we also fitted them to this Kawasaki Ninja 400. I whacked on this particular bike, I put a 110/70 on the front and a 150/60 on the rear. On the BMW, we put a 120/70 on the front and a 260 on the rear of this bike. We then rode these bikes over the 6-month period in 3 different conditions and kind of scenarios. There was spirited range riding with my buddies. There was track riding, doing a track day, particularly on the S1000, and racing this particular bike in the 400 production class down there in Townsville. So the focus of the experiment was on 4 characteristics predominantly. First of all, the feel of the tyre. I was more concerned about the feel of this tyre on the front end, having experienced some minor front end issues over the years, particularly on the BMW, but I wanted to understand the feel of this particular tyre on the front end of both these bikes, the little one and the big one. The second thing we looked at was the grip of the tyre, and we're talking about the grip at full lean, so you've got this edge grip, but also the grip of the tyre when you're under heavy braking conditions on entry into the corner and driving hard out of the corner, particularly on the 200+ horsepower motorcycle. The third thing we focused on was the suitability of the tyre for the type of riding that Pirelli advertises this is made for, and that is a combination of spirited sport riding with some track day riding. The fourth thing we looked at, and we kind of gave it a cursory glance, and that was the wear characteristics of the tyre. Recognise that this is not a racing tyre, right? It was intended by Pirelli to be put on a motorcycle. You could ride it in spirited range riding and then go to the track without changing the tyres and go out and ride the bike in track day conditions. And the intention is it would give you the grip and the feel and everything that you need for those types of riding conditions. And I gotta say, first of all, suitability for that particular scenario and type of riding, fantastic. It is definitely my choice of tyre at the moment, so unless something else comes along, I'm going to stick with these tyres for what we do, particularly on the S1000. Now, the S1000 we put through a couple of track days, and let me briefly just run through what I found. The edge grip, brilliant, right? Can't fault it. The rear tyre, the grip under drive conditions, driving out of particularly the chicane down there in Townsville, the final chicane onto the straight, we're coming out of that accelerating, from somewhere around 160 up to 200, and the tyre never felt like it was going to let go, even though it was leaving massive black lines out of the chicane onto the straight, up towards 200 kilometres an hour. So brilliant drive, brilliant edge grip, particularly when you crack that throttle on nice and early with the tyre on its edge. But the real standout for me was the front end. So anyone who knows, or anyone who does racing knows that you want the stability, you want the tyre to kind of hold the weight of the bike as you're braking into a corner, when almost, if not all, 100% of the weight of the rider and the bike is on that front wheel. You want that stable feel, and that stable feel was there. And I've had the opportunity to compare that particular tyre to other tyres. So it was very much the same feel as the racing tyres that I've run on. So super happy with the stability into the corner. But the edge grip and the feel through the corner, fantastic. But there is kind of a criteria here you've got to remember, and that is you need to combine those things with the geometry and the suspension setup of a motorcycle. So if the geometry is not right or the tyre pressures are not right, then you're not necessarily going to achieve that level of feeling or that level of grip. So you have to factor in all of those elements. But super happy. Definitely my go-to tyre for this particular bike for the riding that I'm doing with it. The Ninja 400, we raced it. We raced it in 3 events, and the way the events work down there is they have a 10-minute practice session, an 8-minute qualifying, and then 5 or 6 races of about 10 minutes in duration. And it's much shorter than you would get at the bigger tracks down south on ride days, which are going to be around about 20-minute sessions. So there were shorter sessions. Well, we rode that bike on 3 race days, and this particular tyre, this back tyre here, on the rear of the bike, it did 2 full days before it was completely worn out right down through the tread to the rubber underneath. So that tyre was no good after that. We took it off obviously and replaced it with another one for the 3rd event. The front tyre did all 3 race meetings, and it's still performing really well and is roadworthy. Now, a commentary about particularly the back. The edge grip is phenomenal. The drive on a particular bike here was always there. I never felt like it was going to let go, even though I was really thinking about cracking that throttle on nice and early. And the other thing about it is, over the life of the tyre, right down to when it was worn through here, the grip, never really degraded that much. So yes, it's on a low-powered motorcycle, but it hung on right through to the end. You could feel it kind of moving a little bit as it got to the end. But it performed remarkably well through its entire life. The front, same thing, same experience as with the 1000cc bike. Very stable under braking, right? Got a much lighter bike coming into the corners in this scenario, but very stable under brakes. We trail braked the front tyre quite a fair way into the corner, and any movement we felt on the front, or I felt on the front, was always predictable. And again, the combination of really good suspension, good geometry setup and suspension settings, and the right air pressures, and then I couldn't fault the performance of the tyre. The only thing I will comment on is it took me a little bit to get it right? We had to play around a little bit with preload, and then the air pressures, and then finally it kind of clicked. Everything lined up, and it performed incredibly well. I think there was one point there where a little bit of a change in the settings, and we dropped a second in our times. So that combination of settings and tyre pressures and geometry, you've still got to factor that all in. So overall, brilliant tyre. I wouldn't race on it. I'm not going to race on it next time. I'm going to be putting Diablo Superbike slicks. The other thing I want to talk about is range riding performance. The local range we've got here is 263 corners. I've ridden it hundreds of times. I know the range extremely well, so that alludes to the idea that I can probably push the bikes a little bit harder than perhaps I should. Similar to what we found on the racetrack, the performance is amazing on these particular tyres. Things of note: one, under the conditions and temperatures that we've been riding these bikes, the tyre warms up quite quickly. So, obviously like any tyre, you've got to ride it a bit, let it warm up and start to get into its operating temperature range, but it doesn't take long to do that. The second thing about it is the stability and the grip of the front end. The feel that you get there is possibly the best I've felt since owning this particular bike, and this 1000 is about nearly 10 years old. So it's definitely my go-to tyre of choice for the type of riding we're doing, particularly on the S1000RR. This bike is going to have slicks on it because we intend to race that one. So there you go, that's my thoughts. I just want to end this video with a couple of comments. First of all, I'm not saying that these particular tyres are the tyres that you must go and get. What I'm saying is these are the tyres that I've been testing, and I've had some pretty good results with these things. Now, they're not, no tyre is the perfect tyre, and all tyres are pretty good for the operating conditions and the circumstances they were designed for. And this particular tyre is extremely good for people who want to do more of the spirited road riding, and then mix that perhaps with some track day riding, because you're getting the advantages of being able to ride it on the road. It's going to warm up quite quickly. You don't need to put tyre warmers or anything like that on it, but it also performs extremely well on the track. If you're going to race and that is your focus, then you're not going to run these tyres. You would run a different tyre depending on those particular circumstances and the conditions of the track and the ambient conditions. Now, the other thing about this particular tyre, it's not a perfect tyre, right? The trade-off that you get for the construction of these tyres and the way they're made is they're not going to be the best cold weather tyre. So where I live up here in the mountains, you know, the coldest morning I think I've ridden in was around about 4 degrees. And this is not going to be necessarily a good tyre under those conditions. It's going to take quite some time to get some heat into them and be able to get the tyre up to its operating temperature range. So you would, in those conditions, you would choose a different tyre, like a Metzler M9 or something, which has got a high silica base, which is designed for colder conditions, but still spirited riding. So it's not the tyre that covers every condition, and I think that's an important point to make. The other thing about this particular tyre is you're not going to get a lot of mileage out of these. If your goal is to, you know, ride a tyre for 10,000 kilometres or something like that, this is probably not the tyre that you should be buying. So if you accept those limitations and those caveats, and basically they're just trade-offs for the performance that you get, then this is a great tyre that's going to be perfect for spirited range riding, the type of riding that I'm doing, riding this bike hard, and also the 400, but not expecting to get the wear out of it. I don't even think about the wear side of it, but also be able to take that bike and then put it on the racetrack and ride it hard as well there. If that's the conditions that you're thinking about riding in, then I highly recommend this particular tyre. And I'm a fan of the Pirelli Supercorsa SP V4. If you want to know more information about the tyre, go to the Pirelli website. You can find out the technical information. But I hope you found that informative. And as I said, I'll be running these for a while, just playing around with maybe the sizes of the tyres. But I'm pretty happy with these particular tyres for what I'm doing now.